i-netradio.com. i-netradio.com.
Dobry den, I Dobropa Jalabat. This is Springtime in Moscow with your host, James Tuthill, and I'm Stephen Stimson. We've got some Russian with a little American, and we're serious with a little humor. So, Jim, what is happening in the world today?
Steve, thank you for the beautiful introduction. I'm Jim Tuthill, and this is Springtime in Moscow. Today, we have Carlos Pundik, the personal developer and business coach. How to create a better world for yourself. We are here on i-netradio.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, broadcasting from the Gold Coast of Florida, between Miami Beach and Palm Beach in beautiful tropical Jupiter, Florida. I'm here in Miami, and Carlos, I believe, is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Carlos, how are you?
I am doing great, Jim. James, thank you very much for having me here today. Very excited
It's
to be
my
here.
pleasure. My pleasure. Carlos, you have listed all over the internet that you are into personal development and business coach. Let's start with the harder one, maybe. What
Sure.
is what is a personal development person? What do you do to develop a person? I want to be developed, Carlos. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, everybody wants to be developed a little bit more. You know, life is an ongoing process of learning to learn. So we always want to keep the door open to learning and growing. The minute we think or we say that we know everything, we close the door to learning. So my approach is really towards people who are open to continued growth and opportunity, people who have vision, who want to make something of themselves, who want to take their game to another level. That's basically what I focus on is people are out there today working hard, doing their jobs, doing it to the best of their ability, and at the end of the day they're not fulfilled and satisfied. So they're kind of looking, they're out there looking, what can I do? What can I do to make things better, change things, change my outlook a little bit? And this is where personal development coaching comes in, where I usually do what I call a full circle assessment, where I sit with an individual and I find out what it is that makes them tick. What is it that they're looking for in life, and what's the direction that they're headed? What is it they want to make possible for themselves, and what's the kind of future they want to create? And then we kind of put a plan together, and as we do that, we create a game. Everything is a game. You know, you want to have fun at this too. So we look at creating a game that's going to help them and support them to get them to the next level and to get them to where they want to be, so that life then at the end of the day is much more fulfilling and much more satisfying, and they're feeling motivated and charged. So it's a great place to begin in coaching.
You look at where people are in life. What general age group are you dealing with? You can't be dealing with a 10-year-old, and I doubt you're dealing with an 80-year-old. What's your basic age group to find out where they are in life?
I'm usually the main group for me is between 35 and 60, more or less. I do have some traditionalists that I coach that are clients of mine who are still in the workforce, believe it or not. And some of these folks are in their 80s and they're still working out there. God bless them all. But most of my clients are either Generation X, top of the end of millennials, Generation Y, but basically Generation X and baby boomers, which was the category I fit into myself. So those are kind of the two generations that are mostly hitting that wall, where they're looking at what's next, and they're looking at making some changes for themselves. As far as baby boomers, and I speak for myself, We hit age 60 and we're looking at retirement at age 65. So it's kind of things are winding down. Now that doesn't go for all of us. There's quite a few of us out there that are still charged and want to keep going until we're 100. Um, and I'm one of them, hopefully. So, but we're challenged when we hit a particular age, and it doesn't mean that you need to start really looking at winding down. There are a lot of options out there for baby boomers who are hitting that top age, and making life what you want it to be at that age is the perfect time. You've already been through the successes, you've been through the failures, you have a lot of lessons that you've learned, you have a lot of knowledge and experience, and you can create a direction that's going to make you get you to a place in life where you can say, I made it, I'm fulfilled, I'm satisfied, this is exactly where I want to be. And when you look at Generation Xers, these are young, aggressive individuals. You've got the millennials that are coming out right out of college right now. They're kind of pushing these Generation Xers through the workforce. They're causing a little bit of conflict because Generation Y, or millennials as they're calling them, are coming out of college pretty revved up. They're aggressive. They're raring to take on jobs. They want high positions, high paying jobs. And Generation Xers who have been at it a little while are in the workplace, and they're kind of, trying to hold their own, trying to get better at what they do so that a millennial doesn't come in and push them out of the way. So that's another reason that coaching comes in handy for the younger generation, Generation Y, because they really want to be prepared. They want to have the advantage in the business world, and that's what it takes today.
Carlos, do you ever deal with a person who feels that he or she is stuck, Stuck, that they ain't going anywhere? And that can happen in a company of 10, a company of 100, a company of 40,000. You can get buried. All right.
Absolutely.
One day, I'm going to give you an example. Fortune or Forbes or somebody published pictures of the top 500 or the CEOs of the top 500 corporations in America. And they were all little itty bitty pictures. They were little squares, but I could see. I'm not blind, okay?
Yes.
And wasn't it amazing? Wasn't it amazing that 90% of those people were good looking? Now, college football coaches, isn't it amazing that 90% of them are good looking guys? What do you do, Carlos, if you ain't good looking? All right? And you're a little overweight and you're not attractive, but you're smart. You know what you're doing. You can be an asset to a company. You have ideas. You're a hard worker. You're a brainy person, but your physical appearance, it's not, you gotta, I hate to say this, Carlos, you gotta be halfway decent looking to get to the top. Ugly guys don't get to the top. Steve Forbes got to the top. He's an ugly guy, but his father owned the magazine. All right? That helps.
Exactly.
And I've always noticed how kings and princes, no matter what they look like, always marry good-looking girls. Isn't it funny how kings and princes always get the good-looking girls? I wonder how that works.
Right.
So what do you do with a person who's a dud? How do you develop? How do you take them to the top?
Well, I'd say get a good plastic surgeon. No,
now, you want to hear a story? When I was a lawyer, I referred a lawyer out of law school because I didn't need him to another lawyer. He walked into the lawyer's office. The lawyer said, you got to get your ears clipped. You look like Spock on Star Trek. And he went out and got his ears clipped to get the job.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you'd be surprised what people will do to get a specific or particular job. It's interesting. Looks are of course looks are important, and everyone's not going to turn away from somebody that's good looking. Everyone's going to look, whether you're a man or you're a woman. If you got a good looking person in front of you, you're going to look. And they're going to attract attention. And that's really what it does. It attracts attention. But I think that in business, you've got to be polished. You do have to be polished. If you want to get somewhere in the business world, it doesn't matter if your looks aren't there. You might not be the most best looking guy, but if you're polished, if you take care of yourself, if you exercise, if you keep your hair trimmed, if you have facial hair, you keep it trimmed, you're coiffed, you take that little bit of extra whatever that is to make sure that you're presentable. It's all about being presentable. As long as you're clean, neat, professionally looking, and presentable. I was a recruiter for many, many years. I worked in IT recruiting. And, I used to coach people. When I first started coaching, I used to coach people that were my clients that were looking for jobs. And one of the very first things that I would do was I would do an assessment of their overall appearance because that was important at the time. And it's still important today. People need to really look at themselves, the full package from head to toe. If you're going to go on an interview, you want to make sure that you're looking polished. If you're a man, you want to make sure you're wearing a nice suit, a jacket, that you're ready to go. Your hair is done. Your facial hair is clipped and well groomed. And same with women. Women want to look presentable as well. And it's important because if you look polished and you look like you're well put together from head to toe, you're going to get people's attention. If you walk into a place and your shirt tail is out and your hair is too long and your facial hair is out of control, that's going to turn people away. So, visuals are very, very important in the world of success. I've worked with a lot of different individuals. I've worked all over the world. I've worked with luminaries. I've worked with sports figures. I've worked with actors and actresses. I've worked with entrepreneurs and business tycoons, and I've coached all of them. And, everybody's got their thing, but everybody's got to look sharp. You got to make it. You got to look sharp.
Carlos, what about body art? Should I go to my first interview with a red star tattooed on my forehead?
Absolutely no. That's a big no. No, I listen. I've got a tattoo. I have it on my leg. I like tattoos. I think it's a wonderful art. I know a couple of my kids have tattoos, but you've got to also be conscious of the fact that if you're going to be out there in the business world, not everybody in today's business world out there is accepting of a blaring tattoo. So if you've got tattoos and you're going on a big job interview, you want to make sure that you're at least cover it up. If it's in a place that's obvious, there are certain types of makeups that you could purchase that can cover it up. But it's something that you should consider and should be self-conscious of if you're going for a big job or a big executive position somewhere. And it's again part of looking business and professional looking, and it's important to consider. So before you go and have a tattoo right in a blatant place that everyone can see if you wear a shirt or not, think about it. If you're in that place in your life that you're going to need to continue to be in the business world, it's going to take a little while for the business world to actually adapt and get there, and I think eventually it will, and it will be accepted.
Carlos, I've done over, I don't know, 550 shows. We've been on the air for 2 years. We have a Rolodex of 3, 4, 5, 600 people that come on the show. And I've only had one bad guest, one out of 550. That's pretty good. All the
Great.
rest of my guests were good. They were loquacious. They were pleasant. But I've had 2 or 3 people that wanted to come on the show, nice people that knew what they were talking about. and they said to me, James, I'm afraid to come on your show. And they were American people, born in the
Yes.
United States, English-speaking people. They said, my vocabulary isn't good enough to come on the show. What do you think of that? I mean, I don't know how big a vocabulary they have to be on talk radio, but does that ever come into play, a person's vocabulary? I lost you, Carlos. Are you there?
It's interesting. I was born in Cuba. Oh, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
yes.
me?
We
Okay,
have a
sorry.
delay between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Yes,
Oh
yes.
my. Um, well, I honestly, I don't think that. I mean, unless it's somebody with a very thick accent, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, we're melting pots. We're big cities. We have a lot of different types of people here, and a lot of foreigners, and that want to work here, that want jobs here, that want to get into the business world here, and some of them have accents. Some of them come from Russia. Some of them come from other places, and they're working on their English. They make it a priority. I think as long as they're understandable, if you and I, or that me and that person, can have a conversation and I can understand them and they can understand me and we're communicating, that's all that matters. Communication is all we got, and if we can communicate, then we can make things happen. But vocabulary is, again, specific choices in words. Some people have more expanded vocabularies than others, and it comes in handy. Of course, it's great to have an expanded vocabulary, especially if you're in journalism, if you're in social media, in industries like that where you use a lot of, you're doing writing, or you're using a lot of expanded type of vocabulary. I don't find that issue in coaching. I think that in coaching, you have to be real. You have to be expressive. You have to be self-expressed, authentic with people, and straightforward, because people can see right through people. And as a coach, it's very, very important to be authentic, to be honest, to be upfront with people. And that's, whatever expression you are, or whatever expression your vocabulary is, as long as it comes across understandable and authentic, and it makes a difference over there in the person that you're coaching, or with the person that you're coaching, then it's working. To me, that's how I see it. It's working. And if they're providing you with feedback, and that feedback is completely legitimate and just as authentic, then it's working. So it's a two-way street. And again, vocabulary, to me, in my industry, I don't see it as important. Now, if I was going to go write an article, when I've written several articles, if I was going to go write another article, of course I'm going to have it, I've got to be very, very careful with vocabulary, make sure grammar is correct, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to vocabulary. But you and I speaking like we are now, vocabulary is not a big issue as long as you and I are communicating and we understand each other.
Carlos, on one of your sites, I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong. You took a quote, which obviously you thought was important, which I think is important also. It certainly captured my attention. And I think it was taken from a guy named Chris Arnold. And
Yes.
the quote is, I'll just read part of it, not the whole thing. Think of yourself as a brand. You need to be remembered. What will they remember you for? What defines you? All right. Now, I'm a brand. And I did just this morning, right before I went on the air, I went downstairs to the cafe in my condominium, and I had a muffin or whatever. And I'm watching TV. I'm watching MSNBC. And a commercial comes on for a brand. I forget what they were selling. And at the end of the 30-second commercial, Carlos, I could not remember what the brand was about. Maybe my
Well,
mind was elsewhere. I don't know. But I think it's the advertiser's job to get my mind on whatever they're trying to sell. All right. I think that's their job, not my job. All right.
Yes. Yes.
And I didn't know what brand they were talking about. It didn't have any impact on me. And I think that that little analogy is sort of true when it comes to people, individuals. You need to think of yourself as a brand and you need to be remembered. How do you try to coach people in this regard? How do you try to instruct them, educate them? How do you try to get them to recognize when they're out there in the world that they are a brand? I have always told everybody I've met that we are all salesmen. Why? Because we are selling ourselves every second of the day. That's my opinion. You may be wrong. That's why I have you on the show. You can tell me if I'm
Absolutely.
wrong. But how do you create yourself as a brand? How do you get people to remember you? And how do you define yourself? Tell me about that.
That's
That
a,
is really, really important in my humble opinion.
Absolutely is. I agree with you 100%, James. Well, we're all our own walking advertisers. We are all our own walking advertisers. And that quote specifically that you read called to me because it was at a time where I was looking at my own brand, myself, Carlos Pundik, and what I bring to the world. What is it that has Carlos Pundik stand out from all the rest? There's a lot of coaches out there in the world. What makes me special? Why would someone want to select me as their coach as opposed to selecting one of thousands that are out there? And that it took some thought, it took some thinking, and it took some having to reinvent myself to get to the solution. And when you look at a brand, it has to be memorable. We have, I don't know how many, as human beings, probably well over 15 to 20,000 moments of truth in a day. So, a moment of truth is when you walk into a restaurant, and the very first thing that you see is a moment of truth. So, if you walk into a restaurant and you see paper all over the floor, and you see a table that has not been cleaned off, and you see people that aren't eating and they're all waiting and nobody's got food, well, right then and there, you're formulating your very first moment of truth. Let's say it's your first time you walked into this restaurant. You're trying it out for the first time. A couple of friends recommended it. They said the food was great. You walk in, and that very first moment of truth is already not a great experience. So then you sit down, you have your meal. The food's okay. It's not the greatest. It's not what you thought it would be. It's not what you expected it to be, especially after you spoke to all your friends and they said it was great. So you formulate another experience right then and there. And every moment is a moment of truth. It doesn't matter if it's you and I sitting across from each other at a table for the very first time, or you're walking into the lobby of a hotel, or you're getting into a brand new car that you're going to test drive. But there's always going to be a moment of truth that's going to create an experience for you in that moment that will be memorable or that will not be memorable. And the ones that are memorable are the ones that you're going to stick with. Those are the ones you're going to keep going back to. The good ones, the positive experiences. The ones that are not, you're going to forget. You're going to erase from your memory. As a matter of fact, you might even go on Yelp and post a negative comment about a restaurant that you ate at. And that's going to hurt the restaurant, but that's what people do today. That's why branding is so important, and people have to be aware that branding can open your doors wide and can just as easily close your doors very rapidly. A business can be brand new. They can open their door, and if they start off with bad service or bad experiences for their customers that are coming in there newly, guess what? They're not going to last very long. And we're all our own brands. We're all our own walking advertisers. We talked about looking professional. That's part of being a brand. You've got to, if you've got to look sharp from head to toe because that's what people are seeing. You're the visual. And if you're your own brand, you got to be put together like a great package put together well, because that's what's going to be memorable for people. So branding is what's out there today. It's trending very big out there. Um, it's part of what we do in my coaching practice. When I work with executives, I work with a lot of C-suite executives, CEOs and COOs and CFOs, and I have to tell you that branding is one of the biggest conversations that we deal with initially, because they're so all over the place that we've got to hone in and we've got to focus and we've got to reinvent themselves and their strategy so that their brand is solid. And people don't get that. People don't get the value of having a brand that's solid, because and understanding that your brand is your moments of truth. It's what people will see and what people will remember. It's a snapshot. That's all you got. It's a snapshot. Think of it like that. When you take a picture, you capture a moment. That's like a moment of truth. And we've got thousands of snapshots in a day. And at the end of the day, we're going to go through them. We're going to delete the ones we don't want, and we're going to keep the ones that are memorable. And that's a simple way to remember branding. Um, and you've got brands out there that we know that have been around for a long time. You've got Pepsi Cola, Coca-Colas of the world, and they've a lot of these companies have had to reinvent themselves. And the trend today is every 3 to 4 years, you as a brand should be reinventing yourself. That is the trend, and that is the formula. If you're not reinventing yourself and your business every 3 to 4 years, you're going to fall behind the eight ball. And guess what? Everybody's going to leave you in the smoke, because that's what it's about today. It's about branding. Everything is tied to brand. And that's how you're going to pull your consumers. That's how you're going to pull your audiences, your customers, your clients. And you're either going to have your loyal ones or your disloyal ones. And it all ties to your brand and your moments of truth that you're creating out there in the world.
Carlos, let me read between the lines on one thing I think that you were sort of alluding to at the beginning of when you were talking about branding. How important is it to make a good first impression?
Oh my gosh. That is, you know what? Think of it as your only moment to make an impression. If you think of it as your only moment, because in reality, really, it probably is your only moment. If you're going into an interview, or if you're going to meet with a client or present something or do a presentation, whatever it is, you're going to engage someone and it's about your brand, you've got that one shot. You're going to either enroll them, and at the end of the conversation, they're going to be enrolled in your product or whatever it is, services that you're offering, or they're not going to be. You've got one shot. A lot of my clients will come back to me and say, "Well, but if it doesn't work the first time, I can always go back." It doesn't always work that way. 99.9% of the time, you've got to enroll your customer the first shot you got. If they're not enrolled, they're not enrolled. And enrollment is not an easy thing. Enrollment is about creating a world in the person that you're engaging, and in the way that they listen to you and what they're listening to. You're creating a world, you're stepping into that world and creating a world for them to understand, so that they see what it is that you're trying to bring to them. They get enrolled in it, they create the same possibility as you, they get excited, and then they step into it with you and they take action. And that's really how you enroll someone. You speak into their listening, what it is that you want to speak to them like, this is what I know you want to hear. And when I can speak to that and you hear it and you get excited and I see you get all excited and lit up, I know you're getting enrolled. And at the end of it, you're going to want to take this journey with me. You're going to be enrolled. So, we're enrolling people all day long. From the minute we wake up in the morning and we say to our honey, will you please get me a cup of coffee? Or we get into our office and we ask our coworker and assistant, do you have a pen I could borrow? It's all enrollment. We're enrolling people from the minute we wake up until the minute we go to sleep at night into something. We're constantly enrolling someone into something. It's a process. It's part of life and it's part of business, big time. If you're not enrolling your customers, guess what? You're not going to have any customers. It's all about enrollment. It's all about getting over there in their world, understanding what's important to them, and bringing your product to that place so that they see the value. And if they don't see it, they're not enrolled. And it's a process. And I teach this as part of my coaching as a distinction, and it's called, enrollment, the world of enrollment, where people get to understand how they can practice this more and become more enrolling so that they can be a better salesperson, a better communicator, and someone that's understood very clearly the first time around.
Carlos, I'm going to tell you a little story.
Yes.
When I started on radio, on internet, I did other shows before this. I got into Russian radio, English-speaking Russian talk radio. And I had a woman who was helping me put the show together. And we went to a Russian party over in Miami somewhere. And I really liked this woman. I really liked her, more than like her.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to impress her. And number two, I wanted to enroll those 300 people as listeners of my show.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked that room, Carlos, better than any candidate ever running for a public office. And what it took an energy, it took brains, it took thinking, it took looking those people in the eye, giving them a big handshake, maybe touching them on the shoulder or the arm, finding out what they were interested in, and doing all that within 5 to 10 seconds, sizing them up, figuring them out, figuring what they were interested in, and selling myself to them. At the end of the party, that woman came up to me with the smile that I'll never forget for the rest of my life, and she said, "Wow, you took over this room." But, Carlos, that took planning, that took energy, that took thought. I didn't just walk in there and figure that out in 2 seconds. One other thing, when I was a trial lawyer for 25 years, no matter what telephone call I was receiving or what telephone call I was making, I always took 5 seconds to think, what is going to be my opening line in this telephone call? Would you agree with me that if you want to do it and you want to do it right, you got to give it your all, you got to give it energy, and you got to plan, and you got to give it some brain power. You just can't be lazy and lethargic. It's not good. You can't sell yourself that way.
No, not at all. You're absolutely right, James. You've got to be, you've got these, like you said, you might have one shot. You've got a moment to impress people, to enroll them, to engage them, and you got to be on, And if you're not on, and if you don't raise that level of energy at least 10 times more, okay, then it's not necessarily going to happen. People like energy. People can feel your energy especially when you're enrolling them into something or you're creating a possibility for them. It's important to be able to get that level of energy up. I'm the same way. When I'm in front of thousands of people, and I've led programs and seminars and workshops to hundreds and thousands of people, in big ballrooms. And I have to tell you, you've got to get yourself psyched up to get up in front of them and bring all the energy that you can to them. And I call it pump up the volume. Pump up the volume on yourself and pump up the volume on what it is that you're bringing to the table. And another very important thing that you hit on too is, there's always that very first couple of seconds in the conversation, whether you're talking one-on-one or you're talking to hundreds of people, where you want to establish a relatedness. So you want to get related with people so that you're not some stranger talking with them. You want to engage them so that they, maybe tell them a little bit about yourself, give them a little piece of you. So I like to say things that, I like to say things that might be funny. I like to call one on myself. Um, a funny, break the ice, an icebreaker. It gets people comfortable. It gets people in the mood, and they kind of sit back and get themselves adjusted in their chair, and they're ready to listen. Because now they kind of have that sense of relatedness with you. And I find that it works all the time. I find that it's an important aspect of being a public speaker, being able to bring that level of relatedness to whoever you're engaging at any particular time. It's so very, very important.
Carlos, Mr. Arnold went on to say that you need to do something that defines you. You need to invent something, develop a unique skill. Well, Carlos, that's not always easy. Let's say I go to college and I take accounting, which personally, humbly, I don't mean to offend anybody. I think that's one of the most boring professions in the world, but there's a need for it, especially you see what some of
Absolutely.
these corporations have done over the last 20 years. They need somebody to keep an eye on them, keep them going down the straight and narrow. Okay. So accountants do play a very important role in our society. But I'm an accountant and I wear a gray suit and I wear a white shirt and I wear a gray tie and I have gray hair and I have gray shoes and gray socks.
You
and
match.
yeah, and Carlos, all I do is I audit and I do reviews and I do some tax returns. Come on, Carlos. Let's be honest. How in the world am I going to do something special that defines me? How am I going to invent something spectacular? How in the world, as an accountant, graduated from the University of Miami with an accounting degree, how am I going to develop a unique skill? Carlos, I'm boring. I was born to be boring. Make me special. How do I
Make
do
you
that?
special. Wave the magic wand and make you special, right, James?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I run across this a lot with clients that I coach. And I happen to have a couple of accountants that I coach too. It's interesting though about accountants because accountants are very conservative. At least the accountants that I've known, and I have several friends who are accountants, and again some of my clients. Very conservative. It's a very conservative career. But just a quick story. I knew a young lady who, her and I went to school together. We grew up together. She's an accountant, she's a very good friend of mine still today. And when she was in second grade, we were in second grade together. The teacher asked in the class, "What is the capital of Florida?" And she raised her hand and she went, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, ooh," like, "Call on me, call on me." And the teacher called on her, and she said, "Washington, D.C." And the entire classroom cracked up, laughing at her, hysterically laughing at her. And you could see her just kind of squirm and sink in her chair. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And in that moment, and I think when you're in second grade, you're around 7, 8 years old. In that moment, you could tell that she was just sunken. And she made a decision that she would not ever raise her hand again in class so that she could be humiliated like she was. And she made that decision when she was in second grade. So she went through life growing up being someone who was an introvert, very shy, very quiet, never really liked to engage too many people at once. And she chose the field of accounting because to her, that field was very, very safe. She goes in a little office, she can close her door, nobody bothers her, she doesn't have to deal with a lot of people, and she can do her math and her numbers and what she does best. And but what she didn't realize, and again, this is something that she's now as an adult through coaching, we were able to come to this conclusion, is that she made this decision when she was 7 years old. So a 7 year old was running the show for her throughout her life and even made the decision of what career she should choose in order for her to continue to be safe. So today, she's not fulfilled and satisfied as an accountant. She would be gladly willing to give it up in order to become a famous dancer because she loves to dance. That's her passion. But she never pursued dancing. She just likes it. She does it as a hobby.
Afraid to
So
fail. She was afraid to fail, Carlos.
that's a big part of it. Failure, a big part of making these types of choices is number one, looking bad. We want to always look good, and looking good, runs a lot of what it is, a big chunk of what it is to be human, especially in the business world. And God forbid we look bad. So, but the moral of the story for her is that we make decisions as when we're young that are still kind of calling the shots today as we're adults, and then we wonder why are we not fulfilled and satisfied at the end of the day. And my coaching to people that are in that spot in their life is kind of a stop, shift, change approach. If you're not happy and you're not fulfilled and you're not satisfied at what you're doing, even if you've done it for 20 years, it's never too late to go back to school. It's never too late to go and get another degree. It's never too late to go back into, if you want to be a doctor, go be a doctor. I always encourage people to look there. And when you're in reinvention mode, it plays a very big role. You really want to look and see, am I fulfilled and am I satisfied at the end of every day? And do I want to keep doing this the rest of my life until whenever I retire? Or do I want to stop, shift, change, and create a totally different life for myself?
Oh, Carlos, let me ask you a question. We're here in the United States of America.
Exactly.
Which is more important, making money or being satisfied and fulfilled?
Well, I tell you that I know a lot of people who make a lot of money and they're not satisfied and fulfilled, and they'd give it up in a second to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled. Money buys honey, but if you're not happy making that money, what good is it? I mean, to me, it's great to have money. It's of course it's going to help and and keep you comfortable and get you the things you want. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy and you're not fulfilled, then why put yourself to that struggle? Why
That's
not
why I
find?
got out of law. I
There
won a
you
lot
go.
of cases. I made a lot of money, but I didn't like it.
Exactly. And now and you're doing what you're passionate about.
Sure.
And that is really, I think, and I've read lots of books, lots of biographies on different famous people who have written books, and you can almost count on it 100% that everybody that has ever written a book like an autobiography, somewhere in that book they'll say, I stopped, I shifted, and I changed my career or my path in order to have the passion in my life that I wanted to have in my life. And it's always about what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about something, you're going to love doing it and the money's going to come. It's not going to be the first thing. It's going to be there automatically because what you're passionate about, you're going to do great and the money will be there. The money will come.
Well, Carlos, can you have your cake and eat it too? I have a very good dentist in Deerfield Beach. Her name is Maureen O'Flanagan. I'm going to give her a plug right here on the show. And she really is a good dentist. And
Great.
she'll hate it if she hears this, but she's about the same age as I am. But what she does is she is also a semi-professional ballroom dancer who goes all over the world dancing. She
Well,
has her cake and eats it too. Is that
yes,
possible?
absolutely, absolutely. I always say, you could play small, you could live in a small world in your own little bubble, you know, have your comfy little job, have your cozy little house, and you could be perfectly happy. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't want people to think that I'm misleading them. There's nothing wrong with playing small, but why not play big when you have an opportunity to have it all, to have everything that you want? It makes for a bigger game. You have to play bigger. You have to grow bigger, and 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 have it all. Why, if you've got to go through the obligation to struggle anyway, why not go through the obligation and struggle to have it all and play a bigger game for yourself? And at the end of the day, really have what you want and really be fulfilled and satisfied and really be passionate about what you're doing. You might as well. Life is too short. These are the things that when you grow older, when you get to my age, and not that I'm old, but when you get to my age, you start to think about these things and you go, am I really happy at what I'm doing? Am I fulfilled and satisfied? I had the 9 to 5 job. I had great jobs. I was in management. I was a director. I had large teams. I was in corporate America for a long, long time, working the 9 to 5 jobs, putting in my time, and it got to a point where I said, is this really what I want to do the rest of my life, or do I want to go back and do what I do best, which is making a difference with people, taking all of my knowledge and all of my expertise and all of my studies and be able to share that knowledge with other people. I love to see people win. I love to make a difference with people to impact their life in a way where at the end of the day they're fulfilled and satisfied, and they come back to me or they write me an email, they send me a note, or they send me a letter that says, thank you, coach. I love my life. I'm happy. I want to keep doing this, and I want to keep getting coached because it's making such a difference with me. That's my passion. My passion is to make that happen for people, and when I see it in action, alive and real, it's very fulfilling and satisfying for me.
Carlos, one time I represented the man who had owned the Miss Universe pageant 2 owners before Donald Trump. His name was Harold Glasser. He had been the mayor of a big city in New York. He had flown 50 bombing missions over Germany in World War II. He had been a very successful lawyer. He was 6'4". He had a baritone voice, and he wore a scarf, an ascot, we used to call them, around his neck.
Yes. Yep.
One day he was leaving my office, and for no reason whatsoever, he turned around in the doorway and he said, "Jim, never forget one thing. The only way the bastards can ever get you is if you quit." There's a lot of truth to that. Never quit
Absolutely.
on life. Keep going. Never give up. If you want it, go for it. I don't give a damn how old you are. Keep going. You know what I mean?
I do. I do. And,
Yeah.
and that's what it's about. It's about, you want to keep it going. There's all these, again, we talked about branding earlier. You've got Nike, just do it. You've got others that are always encouraging to keep going. Just do it. Just keep going. Just keep doing it. And there's a method to the madness with that. The minute you throw in the towel and you give up, guess what? You've closed that door. You're done.
Carlos,
Now,
quitters never win. Winners never quit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And
no guts, no glory. I got 100 phrases for you. Okay.
I might need to borrow a few of those, James.
Yes. I'm going to tell you 2 stories about the little girl that said the capital of Florida was Washington, D.C. Yes. I was a substitute teacher in Dade County last year. I was not a good substitute teacher. It's the first vocation I felt that I really failed at. I couldn't control them. I couldn't get to them. I couldn't make an impact. I tried. But right. I always said, because I tried to at least show them where they were on the planet. I would say, "What's the capital of Florida?" And the first kid would say Washington, D.C. But I'm going to tell you something. Those kids were the next ones to raise their hands. They didn't let that get them down, that the other kids had laughed and that they had gotten a wrong answer. When I went to Rutgers University, there was a guy in his 40s. I was 20. His father had left him a vineyard up in northwestern New Jersey. And I wish my father had left me a vineyard, Carlos. I wouldn't be here as a radio host. And this guy said to me one day, he said, Jim, an embarrassing moment happens every 15 minutes. And I mean, obviously it may have been a little bit exaggerated, but
Of
you
course.
just can't let those things get you down like that girl did. You got to bounce
Yes.
back. And you have to realize what Donald Pasmont said has a ring of truth to it. Embarrassing moments do happen every 15 minutes, and you better get used to it.
Get used to them. Absolutely. Embarrassing moments are actually growth opportunities for me. That's the way that I look at them. And they're opportunities to seize a moment as well because, we have them every 15 minutes. Absolutely. I can remember a real quick story. I was in leading a program. I was actually a keynote speaker at a convention conference in Kingston, Jamaica, and I was presenting to over 1,000 human resource managers on the topic masterful coaching, and I paired them up to do a quick exercise with the person sitting next to them because I needed to go to the restroom. So that's one of those things when you're a public speaker, you've got these little tricks. So okay, let's pair them up, and then I can go run to the bathroom real quick and come back, and they'll never know I was gone. So I went to the bathroom. I put them in their exercise. They're all talking. It's nice and noisy in the big grand ballroom. I go to the bathroom. I have a conversation with someone in the bathroom. I completely forgot that I had my lavalier mic turned on and forgot to clip the little switch off when I went into the bathroom. So I flushed the toilet. I did my thing, flushed the toilet, went back, running back to the grand ballroom to start over again and, you know, get back into the presentation. And all of my audiovisual guys were looking at me with these strange faces, pulling me over here. One grabbed me and turned it off and said, "We just heard your entire conversation over the PA system in the bathroom, and we heard the toilet flush." And I was like, "You're kidding me. Oh my God, how embarrassing is this? 1,000 people just heard this." So as soon as I turned my lavalier, right? As soon as I turned my lavalier mic back on, I said, "So how many people, raise your hand if you enjoyed that flush that you just heard over the loudspeakers?" And everybody started laughing. Everybody was hysterical. And how about that conversation? Raise your hand. What'd you think of that conversation? So what I did was I included it. It was an opportunity to call one on myself and include it in the process, in my day, in my conversation. And if you include it as part of as part of what's happening, it's not as embarrassing as you want it to be, or you think it might be. And I think that in life it's like that. You just have to include these moments. They're part of life. We're all human. We're all going to have embarrassing moments, and you just got to learn how to include them and how to make fun of them. It's an opportunity, I say, to seize the moment to poke fun at yourself. It's like creating an authentic moment for yourself. People get to see your humanity.
Carlos, when I got into internet radio, I was on SoFlo Radio, which I really believe is the only, I don't know, legitimate internet radio station. And I say that because they have 24 regular shows.
Gotcha.
I have one
That's
daily show a day. I'm not NBC, I'm little Jim Tuttle. And the guy said to me, he said, every single show you do is going to have a mistake in it. He said, try to turn it into a positive moment somehow, some way, because internet radio is new. It's just starting out, and screwy things happen every hour. And I've tried to do that as I've gone along. Yes, I
yes,
agree with you. I agree with you on the
absolutely.
flushing the toilet. All the way. All the way. Yes. All right. Now, we only have a few minutes left.
Yes.
You have talked about this got my attention a little bit. You coach high performance teams. I mean, are these pit crews in NASCAR, or are these corporate teams? What's that all about? How do you create a team and make it effective?
Well, corporate teams are teams that are either uh, entrepreneurials that are doing things for a company that are at a very high level, and they can also you can also relate it to sports. I mean, I did some coaching when I did a lot of work with another company and partner in Jamaica many years ago, and one of the teams that we coached was the Jamaica bobsled team. And we didn't coach them in sports. We didn't coach them in riding a bobsled or how to ride a bobsled, but we coached them in communication styles, in how to be able to be more effective in their approach to things. So it's not actually training them in the actual sport. So it's actually coaching them in how to be more effective as individuals. And therefore, it helps them with their game, it helps them up their game, and it helps them be more effective at their game. High performance teams are individuals who are up to something very high level in companies. They're critical issues that they're working on, critical results that the company is looking for, and so they're very fine tuned. A lot of these individuals are used to having coaches. They're used to working under a lot of stress. They're also used to a lot of rigor and getting things done very, very rapidly. So in a normal world, you take on a project, you might have a beginning date and an end date, and it's reasonable. When we're working with high performance teams, we're looking at everything that's unreasonable because it needs to have gotten done yesterday or 2 weeks ago. So of course you've got to be a little bit more aggressive when you coach individuals that are on high performance teams because they're beyond the deadline.
Carlos,
So
we've only got 2 minutes left. I want to ask you one question. I
yes,
had this plan that's on my mind. I often hear this phrase, try to make the person's job fun. Try to make the job fun. Carlos, I was a trial lawyer. My clients only cared about one thing, winning
mm,
their case. They didn't care if I was having fun. I don't believe that you should turn a job into fun. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right or wrong.
well, I think that I'm not gonna say that you're wrong, but I'm gonna say that try this on. That today's world is all about working on a team. The days of the solopreneur are over. That's old school. We're looking at new school. Our program Biz Shift, which is coming up November 6th, here in Sunny Isles Beach, is all about looking at new school ways of creating games in the workplace where you can have multi generations all working together and having fun at producing results. There is a way to make that happen, and that is very, very possible in today's business world. And BizShift is one of these programs that is new. I call it fifth dimensional, which is way out there, and I want to invite people to come and be a part of it because that is where you're going to really look at what it is to create a game in the workplace that you can have fun and produce results at the same time with multi generations. You're working with millennials, you're working with Generation Yers, you're working with baby boomers, and some traditionalists. Everybody's got a different mindset. Everybody's bring something else to the table. Here's an opportunity at Bishop to learn how we all can work together and have fun and create fun at work and understand each other so that the results are there.
Hmm. So you're telling me that you want to create an environment where people want to go into work. They're happy to go into work. They're looking forward to going into work.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
When I
With
got
the
out of law school in 1978, I went to work for the biggest sole practitioner in Florida. He would throw a typewriter at me. He would scream at me. Wow.
yes.
Things have
Yes.
changed, Carlos. Things have
They have.
changed.
Yes, we've got old school and we've got new school. And
Yes.
today it's all about new school thinking and step into results, which
I
is my
got
coach.
you. Carlos, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You were a terrific and enlightening guest. I hope to get you
Thank
back
you.
on again. I have a million more questions to ask you. I want to
I
thank
hope
all
so.
my listeners from Moscow to Miami to Fort Lauderdale for listening in. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Carlos.
Bye-bye, James. Thank you very much.
i-netradio.com. i-netradio.com.